Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Terran. This is the set review for Ravnica Allegiance for green. All right, let's get into the green cards. Not going to waste any kind of time. Let's talk about Axebane Beast, our first card of green here. It's a 4-mana 3/4 vanilla beast. That's good enough for me. It's going to be a 3 here on the scale. Of course, the scale 1 to 5, 1 being amazing, 5 being not great or basically unplayable. And that's where Axebane Beast is going to rest at the 3s drop slot for us. For limited, draft, and sealed, and for, of course, standard, it's going to be a 5, not playable there. The best thing for this card is that it's got 4 toughness. That's quite good. And, of course, it can fill out your 14th or 15th creature slot in draft and in sealed. Next up for us, we have Biogenetic Ooze, a 5-mana 2/2, almost said 4/4, 2/2 Ooze. When it enters a battlefield, create a 2/2 green Ooze creature token. And at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each Ooze you control. You can pay 4, create a 2/2 green Ooze creature token. So Biogenetic Ooze to me is either a 2 or a 1 in draft and in sealed. If opponent has removal for this card, you still get a 2/2 out of the process. And if you have mana to react to the play here and pay another 4, you can actually get another 2/2. And of course, you get +1/+1 counters on these oozes at your incept, so they get larger turn over turn. This is honestly a 2 or a 1 for me for draft. For sealed, can be a giant bomb. Of course, it is a mythic, so you won't get into it too much. As far as this card seeing play in standard, I feel like it'll see some brewing around play in some weird green ooze deck, like a specifically ooze deck, which would be a lot of fun. So I expect this to be kind of at a 4-drop slot for the point system for us for standard. Biogenetic Ooze is really fun, and being 5 mana makes it a little more unplayable for me for standard, but it kind of has to be that because it would be way too good in draft and in sealed. Next up for us, we have Biogenetic Upgrade here, another biogenetic card. This is a 6-mana sorcery. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. Very powerful here. Can definitely, go off on a deck list for you. Can turn your little dinky 1/2 and into a massive threat. I really like this card for sure for draft and sealed, so it's gonna be a 3 here for me. The reason I'm putting it at a 3 instead of a 2 is because it's a little expensive to get off. It's also a sorcery speed, so you can't really interact with your opponent with this too much other than just attacking out the following turn. So for me, 3. For standard, it's gonna be a 5, a little too slow there for standard. It is really fun though. It's basically gonna be like a Gear Hulk ability onto a card here. So very interesting, really like it a lot. And of course the doubling of the counters makes it amazing for draft and for sealed. Next up for us, we have Enrage Forerunners, a 8-mana 7/7 Bore rare. Has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. And whenever it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. Holy cow, this card is amazing. This is a 1 through and through for us for draft and for sealed. This is a rare bomb forever for you. This is going to be great in Simic. This is going to be great in Gruul. Just one of the best kind of green creatures for us in draft and for sealed. For standard, of course, this is going to be probably around a 3-drop slot for us in the scale system here. I really like it for Mono Green Stompy as well. I also really like it as a top end for an elf deck too, since it does, of course, go +2/+2 across the entire board, and they also gain Vigilance. So you could have elves forever and then maybe a 2 of the Forerunners and just go ham, literally. Next up here, we have Enrage Cerulean here, a 4-mana 4/4 Rhino. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So that ability is like kind of deceptively good in some environments, especially in draft and in sealed, especially against blue-white tempo. I really like the Cerulean a lot. I think it's going to be a solid 3 though for me for draft and for sealed. A 4-mana 4/4 is perfect. It's on curve. It's what you want to do. And that added ability on top gives it a little extra muscle to kind of get through some kind of stale board states. For me, this is going to be a 4 or 5 for standard. Because it is so well costed, it might see some sideboard play, especially thanks to that ability. We saw Steel Leaf Champion see a ton of play because of that ability, but also because, of course, it's 3 mana for a 5/4. That's also very good. This is basically a fixed that for 4 mana. Next, of course, we have Gatebreaker Ram, a 3-mana 2/2 sheep. Gatebreaker Ram gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. As long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has Vigilance and Trample. So for draft and for sealed, the Ram is perfectly fine. I think it's a 3 here for us. If you get into a lot of gates, the Ram is amazing. And I actually have this set at 5 for us for standard. However, on stream a few days ago, I actually streamed a Ram deck or a gate deck on the Ravnica Allegiance Early Access, and holy cow, that deck is super good with the Ram in it. It's a 3 or a 4 in that specific deck, but outside of that deck, it's not that great. I do think Gatebreaker Ram, though, is hilarious in a standard. And in draft and sealed, if you get into enough gates, it's very, very good, especially if you're going for a 3-color deck. Next up for us, we have Gift of Strength here. A 2-mana instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn. Gift of Strength, probably one of the more like well-suited pump spells in Drafted and Sealed. It's going to be a 2 for us in Draft and for Sealed. As far as this card seeing play in Standard, I don't think it's going to see that much play. It's a 4. Gift of Strength is quite powerful, and Reach is a very powerful ability as well, especially because we have a lot of really powerful flyers in the format right now in Standard, and Gift of Strength could be a good sideboard tech card in more the traditional format. It could also be some 1 or 2 ofs in a best of 1 deck as well. I really like Gift of Strength as being at the 2-drop slot for us in the point system for Draft and for Sealed. I think this is a very highly pickable card. Not first pickable, obviously, but a very good combat trick for you and attack in trick for you for your deck list in green for Gruul or for Simic. Next up for us, we have Growth Chamber Guardian, a 2-mana 2/2 Elf Crab Warrior. This is a rare. You can pay 3 and adapt 2. Adapt is the Simic mechanic. If this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Growth Chamber Guardian, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Growth Chamber Guardian is super powerful. It's basically a elf that hunts for other elves, and it turns into a 4/4 in the process. This card is amazing. Really love this card. I think it's going to be a 1 in Drafted and Sealed, and also a 1 in Standard in the Elf Ball deck or the Elf Tribal deck in Standard. I think Growth Chamber Guardian is incredibly powerful for that deck. And again, the art on this card, looking sweet overall. Next up here, we have Gruul Beastmaster, a 4-mana 2/2 Human Shaman uncommon with Riot. This is the Gruul mechanic. Riot is this creature enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter, or it has haste. Whenever Gruul Beastmaster attacks, another target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is Gruul Beastmaster's power. That's quite good, especially when you're trying to, force bad blocks or force a trade, or maybe even force a game-ending swing against your opponent. Also, if you aren't in any speed or any hurry, this can come in as a 3/3 and attack in and give +3/+0 to something else the following turn. But giving +2/+0 is also very good with the Beastmaster, and I think this is a well-suited card for 4 mana as well. So for me, the Beastmaster is going to be probably at the 2 slot for us for Draft and for Sealed. And of course, for Standard, it's one of those few cards where it's really good in Draft and Sealed, but kind of terrible in Standard because it's just a little too overcosted for that format. So I'm going to put it at the solid 5-drop slot for Standard. Next up here for us, we have Guardian Project, a 4-mana enchantment rare. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. This is very interesting because it really matters a lot in Commander, as well as it really matters a lot in a singleton Standard format. I think this is going to be a really fun card. For those kind of formats. I'm not so sure this card's going to see much play in Standard at all, so for me it's going to be probably a 5 for that particular format. I do think though for Draft and for Sealed, because you have so few like duplicates of cards in your deck list, the project is probably fine. It'll be a 4-mana enchantment that draws you 2 or 3 cards, and that's perfectly fine, especially in green where you need it the most. Next up for us, we have Incubation Druid, a 2-mana 0/2 Elf Druid rare. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any type that is land you control, or that a land you control could produce. There we go. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. You can also pay 5 and adapt for 3. So you can adapt itself. It can also become a 3/5 and tap for 3 different types of mana, or the same of the type of mana you want to produce. That's really good. Incubation Druid to me is an all-star in Draft Sealed, and it's going to be an all-star in Standard as well. This is a card that ramps you so quickly, especially in an Elf deck as well. I'm really kind of scared of this card, honestly, for Standard implementation, as well as older formats like Modern and Commander. I think this is a very powerful card, and especially in Drafted and Sealed. This is a 0/2 that turns into a 3/5, and that's pretty good considering it actually taps for mana too. So very good card all around for us for Drafted and for Sealed. Next up for us, we have Mammoth Spider. Oh, the old standby here. A 5-mana 3/5 spider with reach. Very good, very simple. Mammoth Spider is going to be a solid 3 for us. A very good card for you in green to kind of slow down those attackers in the air. And a 5 for us in Standard. Not going to see play. A little too expensive, a little too slow, but great in those limited environments. Next up for us, we have Open the Gates, a 1 green mana sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card or gate card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is okay for the gate deck, especially in a Standard deck list, so it's going to be a 3. And for me as well, in Draft and for Sealed, since you can search for a basic land or a gate, this is very good for us. in Draft and Sealed, as it can, you know, limit or kind of help you kind of shrink your deck a little bit, as well as get the correct mana you really need. And since you can grab a gate as well, it's also grabbing you a dual land that comes in tap, so that's pretty gravy. And I really love this card for Draft Sealed. And of course, it's gonna be probably a 3 for me in Standard. Just a very good mana hunting card overall. Next up for us, we have Rampage of the Clans, a 4 mana instant. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. This is an interesting card. I'm going to put it probably at the 4 for Draft Sealed and Standard. There just aren't enough in the environment for Draft and Sealed for this card to really like be great for you. Now, this card might be pretty good in a treasure kind of deck list in Standard, so there's that. So you really kind of want to brew around with this card a little bit to see if you can make a 3/3 green centaur army and have it be worth it. So there is that for that particular format. Next up for us, we have Rampaging Rhino. This is a 5 mana 4/4 beast with riot. Very simple, very straightforward. But the Rhino here for me is going to be a 3 in Draft and for Sealed, and for Standard probably gonna be a 5. Not as impactful to the board side as you might think. But for Draft and for Sealed, this is a 5 mana 4/4 with haste, or a 5 mana 5/5. That's pretty good all around. I wish it had trample or something else on top of it. That would push it over the edge, but it probably would push it into the uncommon territory instead of course, just being a straight common. But a great bomb for you in your 15th or 16th slot in Draft and Sealed. Next up for us, we have Regenesis. This is a 5 mana instant. Return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. This is very expensive, but it's also an instant speed spell, so this could be fine, this could be okay, but it's probably gonna be the 4-drop slot for me for Draft and for Sealed. And for Standard, this is just way too expensive for that format, too slow. It is instant speed spell, so it is nice as being able to cast this on your opponent's instep, but besides that, just not gonna see much play outside of limited, and even then it's not going to see much play there. Next up for us, we have Root Snare, a 2 mana instant. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. Root Snare is back, and it's going to be a 3 for me in Draft and for Sealed. Quite good at being able to slow down your opponent, especially if you're on Simic and you're trying to adapt, or maybe on Gruul you're trying to widen your board state a little bit. For us in Standard, this is really only useful in the Nexus of Fate deck, and of course it's very useful in that deck list, and that's why it's going to be a 4 here for Standard. If not, it would be a 5, but right now it's pretty good in the Bant Nexus of Fate deck, and that's where it's going to go. Next up for us, we have the Sachets Volley. This is a 3 mana instant. Destroy target creature with a flying. Sachets Volley deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent controls. I really appreciate this card because it's a 2 for me in Draft and Sealed, because it's going to deal with all of those Afterlife 1/1 flyers. It's one of the few cards that has a board-wide ability here where it just kind of, again, destroys their entire board state. Very good card, very powerful in green, and a great main boardable card in Draft and Sealed for best of 1, and even the traditional Draft and Sealed environment. This card is also probably heart garbage in Standard, just a little too slow, but still really fun. We also, again, destroy target creature with flying, and then it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying. So if they have like a 3/4 flyer, it destroys that, and also it destroys everything else that's a 1/1. So this is very powerful, but still, even that with Draft and Sealed, still not probably going to see much play. However, or in Standard, not Draft and Sealed. It's fantastic in Draft and Sealed. However, I do think this will be a card that might go up in value, maybe to a 4 or a 3, after we see more of the Orzhov kind of Afterlife decks hit Standard and how the brewing kind of happens there. So this could be a fantastic card. Could also be pretty terrible. We'll have to wait and see. Next, of course, we have Cerulean Air Taker, a 1 mana 0/3 Dryad Defender. You can tap this to tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. Very interesting, very straightforward for us. I'm probably going to put this at a 3 here for us for Draft and for Sealed. As far as Standard goes, it's probably going to be a 4 for us. Being able to tap for mana is always a ability where you kind of want to put this, you know, in high regards. However, it's not tapping itself, it's tapping another creature, and that's something to kind of keep in mind here. I think this card for me is going to be pretty sought after for a Arcades deck, perhaps, but besides that, not going to see much play in Standard. But of course, in Draft and Sealed, it's perfectly fine, and it's going to give you a little bit of mana ramp if you can get to it. Next up for us, we have the Sahara form hybrid, a 2 mana 2/2 human lizard warrior. You can pay 6 and adapt for 4, so this turns a 2/2 into a 6/6. I really like this card a lot in Draft and Sealed, so it's going to be, I really like this card a lot in Draft and Sealed, so it's probably going to be around the 3-drop slot for me for that particular format. This card, however, for Standard, just too expensive. That adapt triggers 6 mana. That's a lot to dump into a creature, and since it is something where your opponent can, you know, of course, respond to it, it's probably going to die in response. response to you dumping 6 mana into something. Next up for us, we have the Sylvan Wayfinder. This is a 2 mana 2/1 Elf Scout. Whenever the Wayfinder enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it on the top of your library. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I really like this card because, one, it's giving the card on top of your library, so you are drawing into it, but it's also not throwing things into your graveyard. So if your deck is not a Graveyard Matters deck, then this is really good for you in drafting for sealed and probably in standard. So Wayfinder for me is probably going to be a solid 3 in draft, sealed, and standard. I think it's going to be a pretty good slot there. It's also a 2 mana 2/1, so it can definitely trade with something after it enters the battlefield. And it's also an elf, so it might be seeing some play in the elf deck and standard as well. Next up for us, we have Steeple Creeper. Steeple Creeper. This is a 3 mana 4/2 frog snake. This you can pay 4 in a blue. Steeple Creeper gains flying until end of turn. Very interesting card here. I think this card is going to see just draft play only. So for standard, this is a 5 all around. This is a card that will not see play. However, for standard, it's probably going to be a 3 for me. I think this is quite good. And it's a card that kind of comes out of nowhere in that it can give potential flying to itself to be able to block a flyer your opponent is attacking in with. There are a ton of flyers in the format, and being able to block a 1/1 is quite good, as well as being able to trade with a 4/4. Still pretty good with this Steeple Creeper here. I keep wanting to say Steeple Creeple, but it's Steeple Creeper. There we go. Next up for us here, we have his Stony Strength, a 1 green mana instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Untap that creature, and that is it. Very simple. Very straightforward. However, I really like this because it puts off adapt on some of these creatures where they have adapt triggers, like the Biomancer in blue or the Growth Chamber Guardian in green. So this is going to be a 2 for me, especially being an instant speed spell and also kind of just being a combat trick as well that kind of sticks around for a turn, for more than a turn. Very good in a draft and sealed. Sadly though, this is going to be probably a 5, kind of unusable in standard, just a little too slow. It does untap stuff, which is quite good, but again, it doesn't do more than one thing, so, or just one counter. So if it did 2 counters, it might be a little bit more usable in draft or in standard, but right now I think this card is fantastic in draft and sealed, but not that great in standard. Next up for us, we have a Sylvan Brush Strider. This is a 3 mana 3/2 beast. Whenever it enters a battlefield, you gain 2 life. So this is a solid 3 for me. 3 mana 3/2, it's pretty kosher, but 3 mana 3/2 that gains you 2 life, that's pretty good. Again, life totals are not really that much to kind of write home about in draft and in sealed. You really want to have really good value, and a 3 mana 3/2 is perfectly fine. It's serviceable. It would be your 14th or 15th pick in your draft pool. As far as this card seeing play in standard, it's not going to. It's definitely a 5. It's one of those cards where it does nice stuff, but it's just too slow and too expensive. Moving right along here, we have is Territorial Bore. This is a 2 mana 2/2 boar. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters a battlefield under your control, Territorial Bore gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. This is very interesting because it can be a potential, like, you know, pump ability for you, which is very, very good for this creature. So I'm probably going to go with a maybe 3 here for us for draft and for sealed. It's a 2 mana 2/2, which is perfectly serviceable and perfectly fine. A low curve for you to kind of fill for your deck list, but it could be a 2 mana 3/3, 2 mana 4/4, and so on, as long as you have a good kind of gate situation going on in your deck list. As far as this card is seeing play in standard, I'm not so sure about that. Probably gonna be a 5 here. Just not enough board impact for standard and a little too weak overall. Next up for us here, we have is Titanic Brawl, a 2 mana instant. This spell costs 1 colorless last to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So this could be a 1 mana spell, which is great. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So a fight trigger that can be 1 mana for instant speed spells. This is really good. Titanic Brawl to me feels like a really great removal spell for green, for Gruul, and for Simic, since both of them give counters. So Titanic Brawl works both ways for us. As far as this seeing play in standard, it feels like a card where I don't think it's going to see any kind of play at all. It is a nice like fight mechanic here for us, but we really don't see that many mechanics where it is a fight mechanic. We like the ones where it's, you know, like Rabid Bite, where it deals damage equal to power from our creature to another creature. So not fight specifically, we like more Rabid Bite kind of situations. Moving on here, we have is Tower Defense, a nice reprint here, a 2 mana instant. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain reach until end of turn. This is a really good card for us, so it's going to be a 3 for us in draft and for sealed. Fantastic for us, especially in standard in the Arcades deck, so it's probably going to be a solid 4 or a 3 for that as well. This can be a card that can win you the game sometimes with an Arcades deck, so very powerful, very fun, and High Alert is the card that you want to kind of get into with the Azurius list in draft and sealed as well for Tower Defense. So just a very good card overall for green. Great way to block stuff as well, and it is instant speed as well, so keep that in mind too for draft and sealed. So you don't want to undervalue this card. I think it's quite good. Moving on here, we have is Trowbred Guardian, a 5 mana 5/5, adapt for 2, and each creature you control control, the +1/+1 counter on it has trample. So very good in the adapt trigger, making it a 7/7, and also making everything have trample. Guardian here is fantastic. I love it a lot in drafted and sealed, so it's going to be a solid 2 for me. I wish it was probably 1 mana less and probably a 4/4 instead of a 5/5 because it would be a 1 mana less, you know, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's going to be probably in the 4-drop slot for standard. I do think it's quite powerful, and it could be a card that will see standard play. But I think right now, Zagan is probably the card that's filling that slot instead. But this card is very, very powerful in maybe a mono green list, or maybe just a Trofrog list. Moving along. We have Wilderness Reclamation here, a 4-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Whoa, this card is amazing. I feel like this card is going to see more play in standard than it will in draft and sealed. For me, it's going to be a solid 4 in draft and in sealed, and for standard, it's going to be a solid 3. This is going to be like an Abant Nexus of Fate deck, or maybe a control deck of some sort, a Bant control deck of some sort. I really like Wilderness Reclamation here for that particular reason. So kind of keep in mind for that. But I do think that besides that, it's not going to see much standard play other than there's like this huge like ramp deck that's kind of coming to fruition somewhere. Really fun card overall, though. Kind of scary, honestly, because it is only 4 mana to, you know, have to untap your lands every single in-step. That's insane for your turn. Super good because that means you can play stuff on your turn and then pass turn and then your lands untap and then you can counter their stuff, and oh, this is really scary. But the last card in green here for us is the Wrecking Beast, a 7-mana 6/6 beast with Riot and Trample. Very simple, very straightforward, and that's why it's one of the best attackers in green for you. Wrecking Beast is, again, amazing for draft and sealed, a huge bomb, probably one of the first bombs you want to get into if you see this as a common after you've kind of gotten through your rares and uncommons. Wrecking Beast is amazing. It is 7 mana though, so it is kind of expensive to get out there, but if it does hit the battlefield, it's probably going to win you the game because it's either a hasty trampler or a 7/7 with trample, and either way, that is a huge beast. As far as this card seeing play in standard, it's just not. It's one of those cards where it is insanely expensive and it's hard to get out. We have Galta in standard, and Wrecking Beast just doesn't do anything against that card, so better to play this in draft and in sealed and enjoy it there. But those are all of the cards for green here. Hope you liked it. If you did like it, or you have a suggestion, or like, you know, you like a particular card, or you have any comments in this, make sure to leave a comment down below. It really does help us out on the algorithm and all that fun stuff. And I appreciate you guys, and hope you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure to hit that bell icon to be notified when a new video hits the channel. I'm having the multicolored and the artifacts and lands probably be one big giant video. There are more multicolored creatures than like double anything else in the set, so gonna be a long video for that one. Maybe part 1, part 2, or it could just be just an hour-long video talking about multicolored creatures. So there is a lot of, or not creatures, multicolored cards in general. There are a ton of those particular cards in the format. So I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one. Peace.